Have you ever felt the sting of betrayal, not just a slip of the tongue, not an accident in the heat of the moment, but something sharp, deliberate, and aimed right at the softest part of you? Maybe it was a friend who knew your fears and used them like weapons. Maybe it was someone you loved who turned your trust into a blade. That kind of pain doesn't leave marks on the skin. It cuts deeper, right where the healing takes the longest, in a place silence often weighs heavier than words. In those moments, anger comes quickly. Revenge whispers to you, promising satisfaction, telling you that if you just strike back, you'll feel whole again. And maybe you've had nights where you replayed what you would say, how you would finally make them see the pain they caused. But deep down, you know the real danger isn't the wound itself. The danger is what the wound might turn you into if you let it. This is where the ancient Stoics saw things clearly. They never promised that life would spare us from betrayal or cruelty. No, they taught something far more challenging, and in the end, far more freeing, that while we cannot stop life from striking us, we can decide how we rise after the blow. We can either become the storm, raging without direction, or we can be the one who stands still until the storm passes. Think about that image for a moment. The storm thrashes, howls, and destroys everything in its path, but the one who stands still, calm, rooted, unshaken remains. That stillness, that refusal to be swept away, is its own form of strength. And here's the key. This isn't about burying your feelings, pretending they don't exist, or denying your anger. It's about refusing to let someone else's cruelty reshape who you are. Because the deeper danger isn't what they did to you. The deeper danger is what their betrayal might awaken inside you. Bitterness, cynicism, a hardened heart that closes itself to the world. That is the silent theft most people don't see. They think revenge will make them powerful, but in truth, it often chains them to the very person they're trying to escape. I want you to pause and ask yourself, who holds the pen to your story right now? Is it the one who betrayed you, or is it you? If it's them, their cruelty still lives inside you. But if it's you, you can choose a different path, a path where you take the pain and turn it into clarity, not chains. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." He was reminding us that the world will always deliver cuts, disappointments, and betrayals. But what defines us is not the blow, it's the choice we make after. Do we lash out, feeding the cycle? Or do we rise, calm and deliberate, showing that nothing and no one can rob us of our inner command? Here's a truth I've learned. When someone betrays you, the temptation is always to mirror their darkness. But the most powerful act of defiance is not to become like them. Because when you refuse to be shaped by their cruelty, you reclaim something priceless yourself. So as we begin this journey together, don't look for easy answers. Don't look for quick fixes or fantasies of revenge. What we're seeking here is something greater. The clarity to walk through fire without letting it consume you. To feel the pain, yes, but to stand tall, steady, and unbroken, even when the storm rages. Because at the end of the day, storms always pass. But the question is, who will you be when the sky clears? Have you ever noticed how much power someone holds when they hurt you, if you give them your reaction? Think about it. When someone mocks you in public, betrays your trust, or throws cruel words like arrows, what do they really want? They want your anger. They want to see you break. They want to watch you lose control, because your reaction becomes their victory. But what happens if you don't give them what they're expecting? What happens if instead of exploding, you remain calm? That calmness is not weakness, it's power. It unsettles them more than any angry reply ever could, because nothing confuses an aggressor more than striking at someone who refuses to flinch. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, captured this perfectly. He wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. At first, that might sound dismissive. How can you simply choose not to be harmed when betrayal or humiliation cuts so deep? But look closer. Marcus isn't denying your pain. He's reminding us that the meaning of the wound depends on the story you attach to it. You can carry it as poison, or you can carry it as wisdom. Let me share a story. This so-called friend mocked him publicly, trying to strip away his dignity. Everyone expected him to fight back, to argue, to lash out. But he didn't. Instead, he looked at the man and calmly said, "If you need to hurt me to feel powerful, then I feel sorry for you. That must be the only way you know how." Then he walked away. No collapse, no drama, just calm dignity. And here's the thing. His strength wasn't in winning an argument. His strength was in refusing to become like the one who betrayed him. He chose not to mirror the cruelty. He chose to remain whole. That's the heart of Stoicism. A Stoic still feels anger, but doesn't let it consume discipline. A Stoic still feels sadness, but doesn't let it drown his spirit. You and I can feel the full weight of emotion, but the key is this. Don't let the emotion become the driver of your actions. Think about how much freedom this gives you. When someone insults you, they expect fire. When you give them calm, you remind them that they can't touch your core. When you stay silent, not from fear but from strength, you show that you are not a puppet pulled by their strings. And here's a question worth asking yourself. How many times have you given away your peace because someone else pressed your buttons? How many times did you look back and regret letting someone's cruelty dictate your response? The truth is, every time we react blindly, we give away a piece of ourselves. But every time we pause, breathe, and respond with composure, we take back control. This is why calmness in the face of harm is not passivity, it's mastery. It doesn't mean you let people walk over you. It means you decide who you will be, no matter how others treat you. You don't become their mirror. You become your own master. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember, your silence, your stillness, your refusal to descend, that is strength at its highest. Because when you stop reacting, you stop being their puppet. You reclaim your place as the author of your own story. The question is not, will people try to hurt me? The question is, who will I choose to be when they do? When someone hurts you, society whispers a familiar line. Don't let them get away with it. Make them pay. Eye for an eye. It almost feels natural, doesn't it? If they betray you, you betray them back. If they humiliate you, you find a way to return the shame. That's the story we're told. Revenge equals justice. But let me ask you, has revenge ever truly made anyone whole? Sure, it can give a quick rush, like striking a match in the dark, but just like a match, the Stoics saw this clearly. They taught that real strength isn't found in matching cruelty with cruelty. Real strength is indifference, not coldness, not apathy, but the highest form of self-respect. Indifference says, you don't get to live rent-free in my mind. You don't get to shape my emotions, my choices, or my future. Let me tell you a story. A woman was betrayed by her closest friend. Lies were spread, trust shattered. Her first instinct was to confront, to demand an explanation, maybe even to retaliate. But instead, she paused. Days turned into weeks, and she chose silence not out of fear, but out of clarity. She realized that playing their game would only keep her bleeding, so she didn't chase an apology that would never come. She didn't waste years waiting for remorse. She walked away, not with bitterness, but with dignity. And that was the moment she became free. Here's the secret. People who hurt you don't expect indifference. They expect your tears, your rage, your endless energy spent replaying the moment they wounded you. That reaction makes them feel important, powerful. Indifference is not weakness. It is sovereignty. It's standing tall and saying, you can throw your chaos at me, but I will not carry it. Why should you let someone who betrayed you once continue to control you every single day after? Here's a question worth reflecting on. How much of your energy in the past has been wasted on people who never deserved it? How many nights of sleep were stolen by replaying conversations with someone who, if they truly cared, would never have done what they did? And isn't it time you stopped giving them more power than they ever earned? Indifference is not pretending nothing happened. It's not tolerating abuse or ignoring red flags. It's a deliberate choice to protect your energy. It's refusing to let someone's cruelty harden you into someone you are not. When you stay calm, silent, and detached, you are not submitting. You are declaring ownership of your own peace. Seneca once wrote, "He who seeks revenge harms himself." And he was right, because every hour you spend plotting revenge, every day you waste waiting for remorse, is stolen from your future. Indifference is the art of saying, "I release you," and in doing so, I release myself. So the next time you're tempted to strike back, pause and remember this. The loudest victory is not revenge. The loudest victory is your ability to walk away with your head high. The world may call that weakness, but look closer. Isn't it harder to let go than to lash out? Isn't it braver to refuse the game entirely? That's not weakness, that's mastery. Indifference doesn't mean you lost. It means you finally stopped playing. What do you think of when you hear the word forgiveness? For many, it feels like surrender, like letting someone off the hook, as if their betrayal no longer matters. But real forgiveness, the kind the Stoics spoke of, is something very different. Forgiveness is not a gift you give the one who hurt you. It's a gift you give yourself. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In other words, the greatest victory isn't in payback. It's in refusing to let their cruelty reshape you into someone bitter, hardened, or cruel in return. That is what forgiveness truly means, protecting your own soul from becoming what you despise. Let me share a story. I once heard about a man betrayed by someone he trusted like a brother. Lies, manipulation, broken promises, it cut him deeply. And for years, he tried to keep the friendship alive, hoping loyalty could outweigh betrayal. But eventually, he realized something important. Staying meant betraying himself. So one day, he walked away. He forgave, not to invite the man back into his life, but to release the weight he had been carrying in his chest. His words were simple. "I left, not out of hate, but because I could no longer betray myself in the name of loyalty." Think about that. Forgiveness isn't always reconciliation. Sometimes forgiveness looks like distance. It looks like no longer needing their apology to move forward. It looks like living free from the endless replay of conversations that will never change. Seneca warned us long ago, "He who seeks revenge harms himself." And it's true. When you cling to revenge, you don't punish the other person, you punish yourself. You poison your days with anger. You waste years waiting for justice that may never come. And in the process, you let their betrayal keep hurting you long after the moment has passed. The challenge, of course, is this. How do you forgive without letting your heart turn to stone? It's easy to say, "I'll never trust again. I'll never let anyone in. I'll keep walls so high no one can hurt me." That feels safe, but it's not wisdom. That's surrender disguised as strength. The harder path, the braver path, is to forgive so that your heart stays open. To say, "Yes, I was hurt. Yes, I carry scars, but I refuse to let those scars define me." Forgiveness doesn't mean what they did was right. It doesn't erase the betrayal. It doesn't even require their remorse. Forgiveness means you no longer let them control your peace. Here's a question worth asking. Are you still carrying pain that doesn't belong to you anymore? Are you still letting someone's betrayal dictate how you see love, trust, or even yourself? If so, maybe it's time to put that weight down. The Stoics teach us that real freedom comes not from controlling others, but from controlling ourselves. You can't stop someone from betraying you, but you can choose not to betray yourself by living in bitterness. You can choose to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. So the next time your heart is tempted to harden, remember this. Forgiveness is not weakness. Walking away is not defeat. They are acts of self-respect. They are choices that say, my peace is worth more than my pride. Because in the end, the real victory is not proving your pain. The real victory is living free from it. One of the hardest truths to accept is this. The apology you're waiting for may never come. The person who betrayed you may never admit what they did. They may never see the depth of the wound they caused. And if your healing depends on their words, you may spend the rest of your life waiting. But here's the secret the Stoics understood. Healing is not a gift others hand to you. Healing is a decision you make for yourself. It's an inner vow that says, I will not let their actions define who I am or how I live. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, put it this way. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. The wound, yes, it's real. But the meaning you attach to it, that's where your power lives. You can carry it as a weight, dragging you down for years, or you can choose to see it as a lesson that strengthens you. Let me share a story. A man once told me about a letter he wrote to someone who had betrayed him deeply. In that letter, he poured out every word he never said, the anger, the sadness, the disappointment. And at the very end, he wrote one final line. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry this weight another day. He never mailed the letter. He never saw that person again. But he said the act of writing it freed him, because the forgiveness wasn't for the other person, it was for himself. That was closure, and it came from within. Think about that. How many of us are still carrying letters in our hearts, words we've rehearsed, arguments we've played out in our heads, hoping that someday, if we just deliver them, we'll finally be free? But closure doesn't arrive in someone else's voice. It arrives the moment you decide to stop needing it. Healing is not one dramatic moment. It's a discipline, a practice you choose every single day. Each morning you can wake up and ask yourself, will I feed resentment or will I feed peace? Because whichever one you feed will grow. And over time, those daily choices create a life shaped not by bitterness, but by clarity. Here's a question worth asking yourself. What if the healing you've been waiting for has been in your hands all along? What if you don't need their apology, their explanation, or their remorse to finally move forward? The truth is, you can't control whether they ever feel sorry. You can't control if they ever admit their guilt. But you can control how much longer you let their shadow linger over your life. You can decide, today, to step out of that shadow. And here's something important. Healing without an apology doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It doesn't mean minimizing the pain or excusing the behavior. It means you recognize that your peace is too valuable to place in someone else's hands. It means saying, I don't need you to free me because I can free myself. The Stoics remind us that we are not prisoners of what others do. We are only prisoners of the meanings we choose to hold on to. And the moment we change the story, we change the outcome. So if you're still waiting for words that may never come, I invite you to consider this. Maybe the only voice you've been waiting to hear is your own. The one that says, enough, I release this. I choose peace over pride. I choose freedom over bitterness. I choose me. Because healing is not about erasing the story, it's about refusing to let the story own you. And when you can do that, when you can let go without needing them to make it right, that's the moment you discover a freedom no betrayal can ever take away. There comes a moment after betrayal when the dust finally settles. The storm has passed, the shouting is gone, and you're left standing among the ruins of what once was. And in that silence, a sharp question lingers. Do I keep staring at the wreckage? Or do I turn, take a breath, and begin again? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look. He reminds us that the power to rebuild doesn't live in the person who hurt you. It doesn't live in the apology you never received. It doesn't even live in the pain itself. It lives in you, in the choices you make from this moment forward. Think of a woman I once knew who lost nearly everything to betrayal. Her business, her reputation, even her sense of worth gone in an instant because of someone she trusted. For months, she replayed it all in her mind, trying to rewrite the betrayal with logic that never came. But one morning, she stood in front of the mirror and whispered to herself, "He took what I had. I will not let him take who I am." That was the turning point. That was the day she began again, not loudly, not with vengeance, but with quiet determination. And this is the choice all of us face. Pain will come, injustice will visit, but do we allow the betrayal to dictate our identity, or do we become the author of something new? Here's the trap. When you live tethered to the past, you become its prisoner. Every step forward is interrupted by a glance over your shoulder. You circle the same grief again and again, never truly moving. But the Stoics call us to a different path. They call us to take what tried to break us and forge it into wisdom, to carry the lesson, not the wound. Seneca once said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." And he was right. The hardest part of moving forward is daring to take that first step, to stop staring at the ruins, to stop asking why, and to begin asking, what will I build now? Wait, dragging you down for years, or you can choose to see it as a lesson that strengthens you. Let me share a story. A man once told me about a letter he wrote to someone who had betrayed him deeply. In that letter, he poured out every word he never said, the anger, the sadness, the disappointment. And at the very end, he wrote one final line: "I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry this weight another day." He never mailed the letter. He never saw that person again. But he said the act of writing it freed him, because the forgiveness wasn't for the other person, it was for himself. That was closure, and it came from within. Think about that. How many of us are still carrying letters in our hearts, words we've rehearsed, arguments we've played out in our heads, hoping that someday, if we just deliver them, we'll finally be free? But closure doesn't arrive in someone else's voice. It arrives the moment you decide to stop needing it. Healing is not one dramatic moment. It's a discipline, a practice you choose every single day. Each morning you can wake up and ask yourself, will I feed resentment or will I feed peace? Because whichever one you feed will grow. And over time, those daily choices create a life shaped not by bitterness, but by clarity. Here's a question worth asking yourself. What if the healing you've been waiting for has been in your hands all along? What if you don't need their apology, their explanation, or their remorse to finally move forward? The truth is, you can't control whether they ever feel sorry. You can't control if they ever admit their guilt. But you can control how much longer you let their shadow linger over your life. You can decide, today, to step out of that shadow. And here's something important. Healing without an apology doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It doesn't mean minimizing the pain or excusing the behavior. It means you recognize that your peace is too valuable to place in someone else's hands. It means saying, I don't need you to free me because I can free myself. The Stoics remind us that we are not prisoners of what others do. We are only prisoners of the meanings we choose to hold on to. And the moment we change the story, we change the outcome. So if you're still waiting for words that may never come, I invite you to consider this. Maybe the only voice you've been waiting to hear is your own. The one that says, enough, I release this. I choose peace over pride. I choose freedom over bitterness. I choose me. Because healing is not about erasing the story, it's about refusing to let the story own you. And when you can do that, when you can let go without needing them to make it right, that's the moment you discover a freedom no betrayal can ever take away. There comes a moment after betrayal when the dust finally settles. The storm has passed, the shouting is gone, and you're left standing among the ruins of what once was. And in that silence, a sharp question lingers. Do I keep staring at the wreckage, or do I turn, take a breath, and begin again? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." He reminds us that the power to rebuild doesn't live in the person who hurt you. It doesn't live in the apology you never received. It doesn't even live in the pain itself. It lives in you, in the choices you make from this moment forward. Think of a woman I once knew who lost nearly everything to betrayal. Her business, her reputation, even her sense of worth gone in an instant because of someone she trusted. For months, she replayed it all in her mind, trying to rewrite the betrayal with logic that never came. But one morning, she stood in front of the mirror and whispered to herself, "He took what I had. I will not let him take who I am." That was the turning point. That was the day she began again, not loudly, not with vengeance, but with quiet determination. And this is the choice all of us face. Pain will come, injustice will visit, but do we allow the betrayal to dictate our identity, or do we become the author of something new? Here's the trap. When you live tethered to the past, you become its prisoner. Every step forward is interrupted by a glance over your shoulder. You circle the same grief again and again, never truly moving. But the Stoics call us to a different path. They call us to take what tried to break us and forge it into wisdom, to carry the lesson, not the wound. Seneca once said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." And he was right. The hardest part of moving forward is daring to take that first step, to stop staring at the ruins, to stop asking why, and to begin asking, what will I build now? The Stoics saw this with brutal clarity. Epictetus taught, "It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them." In other words, it's not the thing itself that breaks us, it's the story we tell ourselves about it. I once heard of a soldier who spent years on the battlefield. When he finally returned home, the war was over, but in his mind, it never ended. A car backfiring would send him into panic. Crowds made him flinch. His body was safe, but his thoughts kept dragging him back into combat. One day, he visited a monastery. A wise teacher looked him in the eyes and said, "Do you realize you are still fighting battles that ended years ago?" Those words pierced deeper than any bullet. From that day forward, the soldier began a new kind of training, not in weapons, but in stillness, in mastering the battlefield of his mind. And isn't that true for so many of us? We carry old wounds like they're still happening. We replay betrayals long after the person has moved on. We poison new relationships with the fear of the past repeating. The war is over, but inside, we're still fighting. Here's the hard truth. Unless you learn to master your thoughts, you will keep fighting battles that ended long ago. So what does it mean to train the mind? It doesn't mean becoming cold or detached. It means becoming steady. It means noticing when your ego pushes you to react, when your insecurity begs you to speak, and choosing silence instead. Not because you're weak, but because your strength no longer needs to be proven. Seneca said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That power doesn't come all at once. It's earned in daily practice. By catching the spiral before it pulls you under. By pausing before you act and asking, is this true? Is this useful? Is this worthy of who I want to become? Here's something most people miss. No one will see this work. No one will witness the nights you wrestle with anger until it dissolves. No one will see the storms you endure without reaction. But over time, the world notices anyway. People sense a steadiness in you. They see that you're no longer dragged into every emotional current. You radiate something rare, not indifference, but command. And that inner command becomes the foundation for everything else. Without it, every attempt to rebuild your life is shaky, shaped by fear or memory. With it, you stop reacting and start responding. You stop grasping out of desperation and start building with intention. So I ask you, what kind of soldier are you on the battlefield of your own mind? Are you letting every thought run wild like an enemy breaking through your gates? Or are you training yourself daily, guiding your thoughts the way a disciplined leader commands an army? Because in the end, the world outside may strike you, but the war that truly matters is the one inside. Win there, and you'll discover a strength no insult, no betrayal, no storm can ever take away. After betrayal, after heartbreak, after loss, there's always a moment when the dust begins to settle, and in that stillness, you face a new question. What do I truly believe now? Because pain doesn't just change your circumstances, it tests your values. It forces you to decide whether you'll build your future around clarity or around fear. Too often, people crawl out of the ashes and let pain write their new rulebook. They say, I'll never let anyone close again. I'll never trust like that again. I'll only love if it feels safe. And on the surface, that sounds wise. But look deeper. Those rules aren't born from wisdom. They're born from wounds. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, if you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out this judgment. In other words, the betrayal didn't destroy you. The meaning you attach to it is what shapes who you become. I knew a woman who lived through years in a toxic relationship. When she finally walked away, she thought she was free. But over time, she noticed something troubling. She had become sharp, suspicious, unwilling to believe in kindness. She told herself it was self-protection, but really it was pain still holding the pen. One day she sat down with a notebook. On one side, she wrote everything she used to believe about love, honesty, and trust. On the other side, she wrote what she believed now. The contrast stunned her. Her old ideals weren't naive, they were her true self. Her new beliefs weren't wisdom, they were scars. That realization gave her the courage to begin again, not by dating, not by chasing closure, but by rewriting her values on her own terms. And that is what rebuilding really means. Not just moving on, not just changing your surroundings, but reassessing your inner compass. Asking, what do I now believe about people, about relationships, about myself? And do those beliefs serve me, or are they just armor? The Stoics taught that living well meant living in harmony with nature, not only the nature of the world around us, but the nature within us. Seneca said, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. Pain strips away illusions. It shows us what's flimsy and what's real. But in that stripping away lies a rare chance. The chance to choose, maybe for the first time, what truly deserves to stay. This work isn't easy. It means letting go of borrowed dreams. It means releasing identities you built just to please others. It means facing the uncomfortable truth that some of the ways you've been living weren't really yours at all. But here's the beauty. Once your values become clear, your life becomes clearer. You stop chasing what drains you. You stop tolerating what confuses you. You begin to say no, not from fear, but from conviction. And more importantly, you begin to say yes to what aligns with who you are becoming. So let me ask you, who are you now? Not who you were before the betrayal, not who the pain tried to turn you into. Who are you right now when you strip away the noise and listen to your highest self? Because from this point forward, every choice you make shouldn't be a reaction to the past. It should be a reflection of that truest self. And to protect it, you'll need more than clarity. You'll need boundaries. Boundaries not built from fear, but from deep respect for the life you're creating. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Let me ask you something. How many times have you said yes when every fiber of your being was screaming no? We've all done it, agreed to things out of fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of being seen as selfish. But here's the truth. Every time we erase our own lines to please someone else, we wound ourselves a little deeper. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus once said, "No person is free who is not master of himself, and part of mastering yourself is mastering the space you allow others to occupy in your life." That's where boundaries come in. Now, most people think boundaries are walls, built out of trauma and bitterness, but the Stoics saw them differently. Boundaries aren't barriers to love. They're the soil in which love can grow without resentment, without exhaustion, without self-abandonment. I once knew a young woman who spent years saying yes to everything. Yes to extra work, yes to unfair treatment, yes to friends who only called when they needed something. By the time her heart was finally broken, she realized it wasn't just one betrayal that broke her. It was the echo of years spent betraying herself. So she decided to try an experiment. For 1 month, she promised herself she would say no to anything that did not honor her peace. The first week was agony. Guilt pressed down on her like a weight. She worried she was letting people down, that she would be seen as cold. But by the second week, something shifted. She felt lighter. By the end of the month, she wasn't just free of other people's demands. She had regained her clarity, her dignity, her energy. What changed her life wasn't revenge. It was self-respect. And that is the essence of boundaries. They are not about pushing others out. They are about keeping yourself inside your values, inside your chosen peace, inside the self you work so hard to rebuild. Seneca once wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving." That's not elitism. That's alignment. The Stoic doesn't withdraw from humanity, but he is deliberate about whose energy he lets shape his soul. And after you've endured pain, you owe yourself that level of discernment. Of course, boundaries often bring misunderstanding. Some people will say you've changed. They'll accuse you of being colder, more distant. And you know what? They're right. You have changed. But if your change is rooted not in bitterness, but in the memory of your worth, then it is a change worth keeping. Too many confuse silence with stoicism. They think staying quiet, avoiding conflict, never speaking up is the Stoic way. But true stoicism is not suppression, it is structure. If something violates your principles, you name it calmly, firmly, without apology. Because sometimes the quiet dignity of a well-placed no speaks louder than 1,000 explanations. So here's the challenge. What lines do you need to draw in your life right now? Where have you been saying yes when your heart is begging for a no? And what would your life look like if you had the courage to finally protect your peace? Boundaries are not about punishment. They are about protection, protecting the self you fought so hard to reclaim. And when created from calm strength instead of anger, they don't feel like walls. They feel like bridges that lead to healthier, truer relationships and a life that reflects the person you've become. Because at the end of the day, boundaries are not just about others. They are about you. They are about choosing to live with integrity, with dignity, and with peace. And that is a choice no one else can make for you. One of the hardest things to accept after betrayal is this. The people who hurt you may continue on as if nothing ever happened. No apology, no explanation, no moment of remorse. And if your peace depends on them finally admitting their fault, you may spend your whole life waiting. The Stoics were blunt about this reality. Justice in the outer world is fragile, uncertain, and often denied. But the justice of the inner world that is yours to command. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Think about that for a moment. You don't need their apology to heal. What you need is a decision, the decision to stop requiring it. I once heard about a man who lost his brother over a lie. That lie poisoned their bond for years. Eventually, the truth surfaced, but no apology followed. The silence of that missing "I'm sorry" sat in his chest like a stone. One day he confessed to a teacher, "I just want him to say it once." The teacher looked at him and asked, "Would it change what you must do tomorrow?" The man lowered his head and whispered, "No." And the teacher said, then let that be your answer. That moment didn't erase the pain, but it loosened the chain. Because the truth is this, waiting for closure from someone who wounded you is like waiting for fire to turn cold. It will not happen. And your soul deserves more than endless waiting. Seneca warned, he who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. When we wait for apologies, we suffer twice. Once from the betrayal itself, and again from the expectation that those who hurt us will somehow fix us. But here's the harsh truth. If they were capable of understanding your pain, they would never have caused it in the first place. So what does it mean to live with meaning without their apology? It means you choose to build without waiting for permission. It means you find joy without waiting for acknowledgement. It means you refuse to measure your worth by whether someone else ever admits they were wrong. This doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It doesn't mean excusing their behavior. It doesn't even mean forgetting. It means reclaiming your energy from their silence. It means saying, I will not let my peace be hostage to someone else's conscience. Here's a question worth asking yourself. How many years of your life have been spent waiting for someone to admit, to understand, to repair? And what would your life look like if you decided today that you don't need their words to validate your pain? Living with meaning is not loud. It doesn't always look like victories or vindication. Sometimes it's quiet and deliberate. It's in the small choices, the way you carry yourself, the way you continue to create, the way you choose kindness in a world that tried to make you hard. And here's the beautiful part. When you live this way, you discover the only apology that truly matters, the one you give yourself, the one that says, I release you, I release me, I am free. Pain shaped you, but it does not finish you. And once you realize that your healing was never theirs to give, you step into a kind of freedom no betrayal can take away. So stop waiting for them to make it right. Start living in a way that makes you whole, because your life is too precious to spend waiting for words that may never come. When pain strikes, the first thing we want is for it to end quickly. We want closure now. We want justice now. We want to feel better now. But here's a hard truth. Healing doesn't always happen on your schedule. Sometimes the greatest ally you have is the very thing most people fight against: time. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the nature of time. He wrote, time is like a river made up of the events which happen, and a violent stream. For as soon as a thing has been seen, it is carried away, and another comes in its place, and this will be carried away too. In other words, nothing, neither joy nor pain, stays forever. Everything flows. Think about the times you've been wronged. At first, anger feels like fire in your chest. Revenge calls out, promising satisfaction. But if you give yourself time, the fire cools. The perspective shifts. What once felt unbearable no longer has the same hold. Time doesn't erase what happened, but it softens the edges. It gives you the space to see that the storm was never permanent. I once met a man who was betrayed by a close colleague. At first, he couldn't think of anything else. He lost sleep, replayed the betrayal again and again, and planned how he might get even. But as weeks passed, he noticed something. The colleague who betrayed him had already started unraveling on his own. His reputation faltered, his credibility crumbled. The man didn't need to strike back. Time was already revealing the truth. That realization freed him. He no longer carried the weight of vengeance. He let patience do the work. And isn't that what time does best? It exposes what is false, and it clarifies what is real. The person who wronged you will eventually be seen for who they are, not by your words, but by the patterns of their own life. You don't need to rush justice. It has a way of arriving on its own. But here's the challenge. Patience is not passive. Patience doesn't mean sitting idle, waiting for life to magically fix itself. Patience is active. It's the choice to keep walking forward, to keep building your peace, even while the wound is still fresh. It's saying, I will not waste my energy chasing what time will reveal anyway. Think of nature. A tree doesn't grow in a single day. A seed doesn't break the soil instantly. Growth takes seasons. You cannot demand fruit in winter, and you cannot demand instant peace after betrayal. But if you give it time, and if you tend to your inner life with discipline, peace will come. Here's a question to sit with. What pain are you still trying to rush through? Where are you demanding answers, apologies, or closure before their time? And what would happen if you allowed patience to be your teacher instead? The Stoics remind us that time itself is a tool for the wise. While others waste it chasing revenge, the Stoic uses it to grow stronger, calmer, and clearer. Over time, what once felt like the end of the world becomes a chapter you hardly glance back at. So if you're in the middle of heartbreak right now, remember this. Don't fight time. Walk with it. Let it do its work. Healing may not come overnight, but with patience, it will come. Because in the end, time is not your enemy. Time is your ally. It is the quiet companion that carries you away from the fire and toward the freedom waiting on the other side. There's one final step in this journey, one that turns personal healing into something even greater, transforming your pain into a legacy. Because what if the purpose of your suffering was not only to make you stronger, but to help someone else rise too? The Stoics never saw life as something we endure for ourselves alone. Seneca once said, "No man can live happily who regards himself alone and turns everything to his own advantage. You must live for your neighbor if you would live for yourself." In other words, your healing isn't complete until you use it to uplift others. Think about the people you admire most. Often, they aren't those who live without struggle, but those who took their struggles and turned them into light. The addict who recovered and now mentors others. The soldier who returned from war and now helps fellow veterans find peace. The betrayed spouse who found dignity in walking away and now teaches others about self-respect. Their legacy isn't just survival, it's transformation. I once knew a woman who carried deep scars from betrayal. For years, she stayed silent, afraid that her story was too messy, too painful. But eventually, she began to share it not in anger, but in wisdom. She wrote, she spoke, she mentored. And in the faces of those who heard her words, she saw something powerful. Relief, gratitude, hope. Her pain had become a lifeline for others still lost in their own. And that is the essence of legacy. It's not about wealth or reputation. It's about the impact your story leaves behind. When you choose to transform pain into purpose, your scars stop being reminders of what broke you and become symbols of what built you. Here's a question for you. What if the very wound you're ashamed of could be the very thing that helps someone else heal? What if your story is the bridge someone else needs to cross their own storm? The beauty of this step is that it doesn't require a stage, a book, or a platform. Sometimes your legacy is in the way you treat people, in the compassion you show to someone who's hurting, in the quiet assurance you give when you say, "I know how that feels, and you will get through it." The Stoics teach us that strength is not just about resisting the blows of life. True strength is remaining human in the face of inhumanity. It's choosing kindness even when the world told you to grow hard. It's choosing to lift others even when no one lifted you. So ask yourself, what will you do with the pain you've endured? Will you bury it, lock it away, pretend it never happened? Or will you let it become your contribution, your teaching, your legacy? Because the truth is, people may never know the full story of what you went through, but they will feel the strength, the calm, the compassion it gave you. That becomes your gift to the world. And in the end, isn't that the highest victory? Not only surviving what tried to destroy you, but rising in such a way that others are able to rise too. So let your pain refine you, let it free you, and then let it serve. Because when your story becomes a light for others, you've created a legacy no betrayal can erase. Betrayal, pain, disappointment. These are not strangers in life. At some point, each of us will face them. We can't avoid them, no matter how careful, no matter how kind. But here's the truth. It's never the betrayal itself that defines you. It's the response you choose. The world will whisper, strike back, make them feel what you felt. They remind us that true strength is not in revenge, not in bitterness, but in stillness, in forgiveness, in boundaries, in building meaning out of what tried to break you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." What does that mean for us? It means you win not by becoming like those who hurt you, but by refusing to let their cruelty reshape your soul. It means you guard your humanity, even when the world tells you to harden. Think about it. Anyone can lash out. Anyone can let bitterness consume them. That's easy, but it takes discipline to stay calm when provoked. It takes courage to forgive not for them, but for yourself. It takes wisdom to walk away, not with hatred, but with dignity. And it takes vision to transform your pain into the raw material of a new life. I want you to pause and ask yourself, what would it look like if you turned your pain into fuel, not poison? What if instead of letting betrayal define you, you let it refine you? The Stoics never promised us a painless life. They promised us tools. Tools to rise above what we can't control. Tools to choose clarity over chaos, purpose over pride, peace over revenge. And when you practice that choice day after day, you discover something remarkable. The betrayal no longer owns you. True freedom is this. You don't need their apology. You don't need the justice system of the world to balance the scales. You don't need them to understand the damage they caused, because your peace no longer depends on them. It depends on you. I once heard a man say, "He took what I had, but I will not let him take who I am." That is the essence of Stoicism. You may lose things, people, even chapters of your life, but your dignity, your self-mastery, your inner freedom, those are yours to protect. So as we close, remember this. Betrayal may scar you, but it doesn't have to define you. Pain may shape you, but it doesn't have to destroy you. You can choose to turn every wound into wisdom, every scar into strength, every ending into a beginning. Because real power is not found in control over others. Real power is found in self-mastery, in the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs revenge, no longer needs recognition, no longer needs permission to heal. That is what it means to live the Stoic way. To walk forward untouchable, not because life spared you from pain, but because you chose to rise above it. So if you've been betrayed, if you're still holding on to anger, I leave you with this. Don't let them own another chapter of your story. Write the ending yourself. Write it with peace. Write it with dignity. Write it with the unshakable freedom that comes from mastering your own soul. Because in the end, the greatest justice is not what happens to them. The greatest justice is the life you choose to build after them.